The Sleepers, Chapter 12, The Other Side. I sacrificed my health to survive the sleep science program. Juggling chemistry, part-time research, and full-time sleep required giving up certain amenities. Electives being the obvious choice disappeared first. Second came my own sleep. When my parents visited occasionally, out of duty or espionage, I don't know, they were keen to comment on my dogged appearance. "We sent you away to become a scientist, not a zombie." These were sentimental words from a father not prone to sentiment. Knowing me to be a sober youth, they never suspected alcohol as the cause of my appearance. Not that I adhered to any strict form of teetotalism, but I was simply too busy in this life to drink. Ironically, my parents might have been happier to learn I was partying at college rather than living their real suspicion. I am sure my mother would have been thrilled to hear rumors of the remotest spark of social gaiety befitting my age. Without equivocation, they knew my appearance was a casualty of my actions. I was wholly lost in work and school, stretching myself beyond natural limits to achieve and prove myself. My lifestyle was an unsustainable path to destruction. My mother told me so with her most vehement, affectionate tone. Lucius Santos provided the solution for my withering existence in the middle of my third year. Year 3 is the most strenuous of the 4-year undergraduate program, testing the student's mettle through Darwinian elimination tactics. Professors respond to some unnatural, unspoken connection and scheme telepathically to crush their students. Tests all fall on the same day. Projects are all due the same day as tests, and more homework is required than could feasibly completed in the allotted time. Gratuitous curves are the only reason the student body does not simultaneously fail. It was during this crushing time that Lucius and I engaged in one of our spontaneous weekly discussions. I visited his office as usual to debate a homework assignment, believing the solution to be incorrect. Dr. Santos surveyed my ragged dress and drooping eyes. The appearance was not new. Degeneration took time. If I were the rise and fall of the Romans, one would suspect the sacking of Rome was imminent. The Vandals were coming. Lucius had surely noted this decline in recent visits and chose now to comment. "Jean, you and I both know you are falling to pieces. You have been able to balance the school and workload, but at your current pace of exhaustion, a drastic change needs to happen soon, or you will lose yourself." Karl would never have uttered these sympathetic words. He taught me to expect harshness and intolerance for inability. "Suck it up!" Lucius did more than observe. He was a true scientist. Having observed my behavior and hypothesized the conclusion, he altered the parameters. "Any scientist can point out an error. I expect you to provide a solution." Such was the mantra that governed his classes and research group. Knowing the answer was irrelevant. Providing a reasonable guess and explanatory basis proved a worthy scientist. Lucius cherished colloquial life lessons and heuristics. His anecdotes moved lectures along at the mixed speed of a pushcart with a malfunctioning hyperdrive. We forgave his didactic storytelling as it slowed the class pace down long enough to breathe between complex topics. "Jean," he continued, "I have a proposal." My interest spiked again. I didn't always like Lucius's exhortations, but they were always worth entertaining. I waited patiently. I had learned it was always better to wait when your elders have a pressing thought. "Please close the door," he directed. This was going to be an interesting thought. "I am going to hire you a sleeper." "What?" I blurted, perplexed and confused. "I don't need a sleeper." His proposal triggered my independent defense mechanism. "I know such an arrangement is unorthodox," continued Lucius, unfazed, "but I believe it is the only way you can achieve the greatness you seek in sleep science, while maintaining your ridiculous role as Ray's sleeper. If I could persuade you to end that relationship instead, I would try. But I know such a course is fruitless, so I'm offering you a sleeper." The appeal was forceful, but it was an offer, and I had the choice of acceptance. I persisted. "But Dr. Santos, your research is the basis for why sleepers do not also have sleepers. The brain pattern degradation from long-term sharing sleep and borrowing sleep is too much. I have read the papers. For very short occasions, maybe a couple of days, a sleeper can healthily process concurrent borrowed sleep. But after a few months, maybe a few years, the damage is irreversible. This is your work. You would have me take this risk?" I knew this scenario well, having received training sleeps from Karl. His eyes closed as he assumed the wizard pose and sighed slowly. You are my best student. Lucius stopped to adjust his glasses, a fruitless correction as he kept his eyes seemingly closed. The adjustment purchased a moment to let me ponder his compliment before he resumed. I knew you actually read the group reading assignments. His tone changed to a whisper, matching the softness of proposed treason. Given your familial connections, I am sure you have heard doubts expressed about the Senate Sleep Committee. Of course, I responded with less caution than his tone merited. But the stories were in hushed tones, shadows of doubt clearly meant to never be repeated. Then perhaps it would not surprise you to learn that the SSC may have influenced the strength of argument in my papers. Perhaps my research only indicated there could be adverse side effects to being both a sleeper and a client. This censorship and manipulation did not surprise me. I needed to end the sleeper system forever. The results were inconclusive, Lucius admitted. The SSC, or more specifically Senator Blair, exaggerated the outcome and claimed clandestine ownership of the studies. They went so far as to confiscate the lab notes taken during the trials. Two burly men in suits persuaded me, with very few words, to put a moratorium on my sleep for sleepers research. I am sure you can connect the dots as to why the government squelched this work. The picture was becoming more obvious. He finished the narrative and returned to us, teacher and pupil. I cannot guarantee the absolute lack of side effects, but I believe we can monitor the impact and that it will be benign. Regardless, the effects will be less severe than the damage you are currently self-inflicting. I agreed to the experiment before he finished his thoughts. I would not let the SSC control my life another day. I may have been impulsive, but I recognize logic. I'll do it, but it has to stay a secret. People, especially sleepers, can usually be bought for the right price, a very low price. How will you ensure confidentiality? I'll be your sleeper. My mouth dropped in surprise, and my hands braced the table to steady myself or stand in resistance. Don't protest, he reassured. I know this is a strange proposal, and I know we are not the perfect matches for our ideal dream harmonization. But this is the best way to keep the secret safe. I will sleep for you, and you will work for me, and for Ray. But what about your own sleep, your work, your reputation? I had so many questions and ways of protesting this divine gesture, but he cut me short. I only sleep a few hours each night these days. I can't receive borrowed sleep, but I am still able to give it. You are a cause worth giving. As far as the reputation, I will have fewer hours a day to work and read or grade tests all night. But I've had my season. Besides, my home is quiet and forgotten. Our secret will be safe. I'm going to ask one thing more in return, though. With the gift of time, I have one expectation. You will be a scientist, a sleep scientist, and as your birthright, you will have great influence in the sleep world, a world that is now everywhere and everything. As such, I want you to write down what you learned from our reading assignments. I almost frowned at this surprise request. The wizard mastered the unexpected. We had always ended every reading with discussion, but though I prepared, our dialogue still took more the form of a spontaneous two-person Socratic seminar, nothing formalized in worthy writing. I want you to understand sleep beyond the 7-hour download. I want you to start a sleep journal, not a dream journal, but a sleep journal, an encapsulation of this world. You have seen the world of sleep and its unfairness. You have been an observer, a natural scientist, but it is time to do more than see. Turn your observations into hypotheses and truth. Record your experience and the meaning of this world. Allow your understanding to grow as you internalize sleep science and America asleep. Then, when the time is right, do something about it. I faltered. Okay, I will. Like the original mentorship offer from Karl, I could not foresee the importance of this writing, but I could sense this action mattered. Again I left his office in deep thought. If I didn't know better, I would have believed that Lucius knew my dream, that someone was telling him my secret. and that this was his way to help. Only Karl knew my plans, and the grave claimed him shortly after I entered college. Karl may have taught me how to be a sleeper, but Lucius taught me how to be a client. Chapter 13, HREM. Nothingness enveloped me, just shadows, or rather shadows of shadows. Sparks of life beyond my reach flickered past. Some story, some semblance of thought there, but nothing solid. More nothingness. It was a high-speed train through a void, a collision course with a black hole devouring the memories of another. It had been a dream, or just the shell of a dream. Straining, I tried to recall what I saw, what I felt, anything. Recall produced puzzle pieces without a map, blurry and incoherent. It was like watching the world by reflection on choppy waters, stormy waters. Motion scatters the light and obscures the reality. My mind attempted to rationalize the holes with the only key possible, my own experience. But extrapolation failed. This just wasn't right. I shook off the vexation and resisted the natural urge to yank out the sleep tube hanging in my arm, my client arm. Lifting the visor, reality returned. Lucius Santos owned a home on the crest of Cayuga Lake. A 3-story meandering retreat, it was constructed as if by accident and without plan. For its precarious pattern, it was perfectly inviting and held its own against the flanking army of deciduous giants. A zigzagging path led out the back to a private dock below the home. There sat Lucius, meditating or reading. It was hard to say, but that was definitely his spot. Even late at night and exhausted, that man wanted to be learning. A canoe was tied to the rail, but the dock with its 2 chairs and reading light was his second home, weather permitting. The nighttime view was breathtaking with moonbeams and cabin lights dancing on the water. I lay on a reclining chair on his enclosed deck above the path. Lucius must have slipped away right after plugging me in for download. He wasn't going to wait awkwardly at my side while I slept. There was life to live. Yet it couldn't have been more than 30 minutes, and I felt perfectly refreshed. Borrowed sleep from Karl was always in small doses, the rest akin to slamming an energy drink or stealing a short nap. Never good, solid rest. Those transfers were packed with lucid nirvana, not the blandness I had just experienced. For once, I saw the way others saw. Lucius had invited me over for the first transfer. He wanted to ensure all went right. We'd arranged our schedules to avoid even the appearance of our deal. When I arrived at the lake house, it was just past midnight. I had attended classes, worked in the lab, and downloaded Sleep for Ray from 4 to 11 p.m. Future downloads would occur while locked up in my single-occupant dorm room. I'd have to keep the lights dim to avoid suspicion. The darkness was part of the job. At last, I might have enough energy to attend classes, work in the lab, sleep for Ray, and then start my homework and research. I was undergoing new sensations. Hunger swelling first after I dispelled the disorientation. My body was ready for another day, the nocturnal day, and signaled it was feeding time. Maria Santos had long since retired for the night. Successful sleep transfer stopped working for her years ago, so this hour was just too late. But she must have known what I might feel and had a light meal of feijoada and rice, leftovers from their dinner, set aside for me to reheat once the transfer finished. Lucius loved the water, whether on the enclosed deck or out on the dock. He liked watching the boats on sunrise and pondering life. A wizard's life required real thinking time. I could grow accustomed to this chair and the serenity of moving water, and the black beans in Maria's feijoada were divine. While enjoying the meal, I considered again those unsettling dreams. They really were as hazy as everyone complained, but that was all that was needed. Desmond and John Sr. proved that fact. I could see why creativity vanished with such poor transfer. The brain barrier, the download speed, and the complexity in deciphering external brain patterns all contributed to the poor transfer, terrible recall, and hazy dreaming. But it was still recuperative, without the madness factor. I was refreshed, no doubt, but not inspired. Conversion to client life was easy for me. I repurposed one of my 2 sleep ports as the receiver, and only had to plug in to start. Lucius, on the other hand, Had to add a second port to make the sleeper circuit, or so I first thought. I found out later he'd done this years ago for sake of perfecting the process and teaching students. During the download phase, blood circulates through surgical tubing fastened to the two implants. One hose runs to the extraction unit, which steals microliters of the time-sensitive sleep chemical from the blood flow via zeolite adsorption. The blood next flows through a pump, which returns it to the main blood supply using the second hose and port. Extracted chemical is stored in the device, rinsed off the zeolite with an effluent following download, and stored in a transport bottle. The receiver unit was arranged next to my lounge chair, perched on the stand normally meant for drinks. Lucius's transport bottle was snugly plugged in and clearly depleted. The effluent to detach the chemical serves as the carrier fluid for returning the sleep compound to the client's bloodstream, leaving each bottle empty after download. A smaller pump on the receiver unit injects the chemical, matching the sequence of the REM pattern. Sleep Free had perfected these finer details, beyond recognition since Desmond's discovery, but the process was the same, out from one person, into another. To prevent disease transmission, sleep units cycle cleansing rinses over the catalyst surface after every operation. The effluent cycle then removes only clean chemical, no biotracers. As if God intended to thwart Sleep Free's creation, the sleep generative chemical exists in its potent natural state for less than a day or two before biodegradation. Early scientists tried to steal or synthesize the chemical from animals, but published research reported that primate matching seemingly failed. Borrowed sleep depended on human specimens. When I could get my grandfather to talk about the old days, his favorite topic was just how bad each test had been. He could recite the side effects of probably all 100 or so tests. Timing the pump rate mostly stung, with some tests feeling more like caffeine explosions than pleasant rest. Developing the right delivery port size was havoc to his arms, inflicting perpetual bruising that never left him good at tennis or golf. Deciphering the brainwaves was more painful, but worth the prize. Getting the HREM right had truly been the worst. Lucius glanced up from his watery sanctuary to find me posed in the window, finishing my meal. It had been too delicious to sit down. He pocketed his book and started the ascent to bid farewell for the night. My day was just starting. I began packing up the equipment, tubes, machine, and visor. Thanks to his classes and countless hours of instruction, I now understood the whole process at a level few would reach. America wanted the toy, not the science. It was magic to them, but fact to my family. Well, fact and earnings. Every client's headset is preloaded with the sleeper REM pattern and brainwave data, which is saved on memory files in the cloud during upload. The headset looks like a sleeper's, but it functions in playback mode rather than record. A client's complete rest depends on simulating false REM cycles. During natural sleep, a typical REM cycle lasts approximately 90 minutes, with 4 to 5 REM cycles required per night per person. To induce successful borrowed sleep artificially, the hardware imposed an accelerated REM cycle achieved via the hyper-rapid eye motion (HREM) modulator. The HREM tricks the mind into false rejuvenation. Microlights emitted from the client visor provide a signal lock for the client's pupils, penetrating the eyelid barrier, replaying the recorded sleeper REM cycle, but at 15 times the speed. These lights cheat the natural cycle, activating unnatural sleep at high speed. Desmond optimized the time cycle to minimize client recharge time and efficiently deliver a positive sleep experience. John Sr. had been the judge of such success, his moods a dead giveaway of the trials. After nailing down the right playback speed, Desmond expanded the test base and discovered the need to trigger dreams via transmitted brainwaves. HREM and chemical transference alone were unsustainable. Even the dark shadows I just endured were enough to inhibit insanity. The visor pivots off the headset, which fits tightly to the skull, providing a neural pathway for wave transference. Transmitters target key cranial receptors. The brainwaves play at the same high speed as the HREM, matching the sequence to simulate natural sleep. With my equipment packed, I was ready to begin client life from the luxury of my private dorm. Our first transfer had gone well enough. I'd hate the dreams, but with Lucius's help, I might get through my degrees and live to change the world.